Good. Thank you guys for coming and being here with us today. I appreciate that greatly. I know that some of you have traveled from the north and from the south, and um, as we say in the north, it's been a little chilly, so you'll get to warm up today. We're going to be here in the 50s here in Jackson. So again, thank you so much for being here. Dr. Rankins, I'll call upon you to start the presentation.
Thank you so much, Senator Parks, for this opportunity to come before this subcommittee and talk to you briefly about the needs and the good things happening across our IHL system on our university campuses. Again, this is a great opportunity for us to spend a little time with you and the other members of the subcommittee. I want you to know, Senators, that IHL has been a good steward of the support the legislature has provided us in the past. Our Board of Trustees has maintained sound financial oversight over our university system. We currently have a AA2 credit rating from Moody's Financial Services. In addition to its financial oversight, the IHL Board has implemented system-wide initiatives resulting in over $330 million in savings, as indicated on slide number 2. As indicated on slide number 3, our universities have awarded over 19,000 degrees in 2024, representing nearly a 16% increase since 2014. 70% of our nursing graduates and 2/3 of our education graduates work here in Mississippi 5 years after earning their degrees. Now, that doesn't mean that the other percent have left the state. They may be in graduate or professional school, or they may be working in the state of Mississippi and just working outside of their academic field. Slide 4 depicts the recent 20-year history of our universities with respect to successes and challenges. Enrollment and degrees awarded have increased by 18% and 56% respectively. Faculty numbers have remained relatively stable, and the number of administrators have declined by 6%. And thanks to the help from this legislature, faculty salaries have increased 49% over the last 2 decades. We also see that state general fund revenue has increased by 82%. However, general fund support to our universities has increased 31% over that same time period. So although our funding has increased thanks to your support, we are receiving a smaller share of all the general funds appropriated. At the same time, costs are up, as indicated by CPI, by 77%, which has resulted in significant increases in tuition. On slide 5, if we look more at more recent trends of the last 10 years, general fund revenue has increased by nearly 39%, while appropriations to our campuses and to the medical center have increased by 18% and 11%, respectively, over that same time period. Despite rising costs and becoming more dependent on tuition revenue to operate, our universities are affordable and much more affordable than peer and sub-peer universities in other southern states, as indicated on slide 6. Even our large R1 research universities have lower resident tuition than regional universities in contiguous states to ours. Another pressure point for our universities is faculty salaries, as indicated on slide 7. Currently, our salaries are at about 77% of the SREB average. With your support, we have been able to raise salaries over the past few years, and I don't want that point to get lost in this presentation. However, competing universities in the region are also raising their salaries, and unfortunately for us, they're doing so at a pace faster than we are, which means the gap is not closing, and in actuality, the gap is starting to slightly widen. This makes it difficult for the men and women here with me today in recruiting and retaining talented research and teaching talent when faculty can obtain higher salaries in neighboring states. On slide 8, I want to talk about our facilities. Back in 2016, we did an assessment that showed a 10-year backlog of about $1.2 billion in deferred maintenance across all of our university campuses. And at that time, Sightlines advised us that an investment of $100 to $200 million annually was needed to prevent that backlog of deferred maintenance from growing. A preliminary report recently shows that the 10-year backlog is actually stable. And that is because of the support that you all have given us over the last 10 years in addressing our facilities. So they predicted $100 to $200 million would stop that backlog from getting worse. And that is what has happened over time. And we appreciate the support you've given us in addressing our deferred maintenance needs. But we still have $1 billion plus in deferred maintenance to address. On the next slide, I want to talk a little about insurance. In our request, we will be requesting additional funding to help our universities address a more recent problem with higher insurance premiums, as well as higher deductibles whenever our universities have to file a claim. And I have some examples here. If we look back at the ice storm at the University of Mississippi in 2024, which caused more than $4 million in damage, the deductible at that time was $250,000. If that same event occurred in 2025, for that same event, their deductible would be $2.5 million. The hailstorm at Delta State in 2023, which caused $8.5 million in damage. If they had that same level of damage today, their deductible will be $6 million when it was $250,000 2 years ago. So this is a real additional cost that our universities are having to deal with. On slide 10, additional pressures on university budgets. Of course, we're all aware of the 0.5% PERS employee increase that we'll have to cover. And also the issues that we're facing with inflationary cost increases post-COVID. With fixed cost increasing from year to year, even if we're level funded, it will feel like a cut to our budgets because of these additional costs. That brings me to slide number 11 in our request, which is a 16% increase over fiscal year 2025 to address faculty salaries the increase in PERS, employee contribution, the increase in insurance and other inflationary costs, our facilities management plan with Gordian, and also a small increase to help support our C2C or complete to compete program, which is a system level initiative to help adult students that have stopped out return back to our institutions and earn their degrees. Senator Parks, I want to thank you for your time, your support. I want to thank the other members of the subcommittee and the staff. I have the presidents and the vice chancellor from the University of Mississippi here with me. At this time, the IOs can address this body and talk about specific issues on their campuses, and I can also entertain any questions from the subcommittee. Thank you, Senator Parks.
Thank you, Dr. Rankins. Today, as he said, happy to entertain any questions or comments that you all might like to make, but please introduce yourself as you make those comments or questions. And is there anyone on the committee at this point have a question? Okay. I do have a series of questions for you guys. If I might ask those right now, if that's appropriate. My first question is, is there a board policy to address the deferred maintenance before building new construction?
I don't know. I don't think we have a specific policy, but I will tell you that out of the university's operating budgets, they do budget annually funds to address routine R&R on their campuses. And, they are expected to maintain the facilities that they have. So outside of the funds that the legislature provides and capital funding, out of their operational budget, they pull a portion out of that and set aside for routine repair and renovation.
So each individual university does bear part of that burden.
Yes.
And they do, so they budget each year and then bear part of that and then bring forth
Yes.
another portion. Okay. Okay, one other question. Does each campus perform a space optimization study?
We do a system-wide space optimization study across the system. And those studies in the past have helped us formulate our multi-year bond plans. So we're actually in the middle of doing our next round of that study now. So yes, we are doing that as a system.
So you do it as a system, but you also do it as individuals.
Yes.
And then so you mentioned and you talked a little bit about the insurance premium. So is there something that the board is doing to address that, or something that the individual universities are doing to address that?
Right now, and I brought our director of risk management here with me in case we had more specific questions, but we are looking at some options to address this issue. One of the initial options we looked at is trying to create a internal pool to try to help, particularly our smaller universities, address these higher deductibles they're having to cover now. But there's some FEMA issues that we're trying to work through to make sure that, if there's an event where the universities can receive money from FEMA, that it doesn't interfere with that reimbursement. I'll let David Buford, if you don't mind, talk a little bit more about what we're doing to try to address this issue internally.
And if we could talk to also Why have we seen such a sharp increase? I mean, that is dramatic.
Well, it's kind of the way the insurance business works. That's not my area, but you know, when you have multiple events and claims where they pay out large amounts, they increase their cost to their customers. And David,
Push it hard.
Got it. All right, we'll do a mic check. Okay, great. My name is David Buford. I'm the Director of Risk Management at IHL. And so on the premium increase side, we do implement competition in all of our processes. And I feel like we do have a really good program in place. And we work hard to maintain the best relationships with our incumbent insurer so that we can keep premiums lower. But it's a national problem. Inflation has driven up the cost of insurance. The cost of construction has gone up substantially in the last 3 years, 4 years. And claims drive up the cost. So it's not just your claims, but it's what the insurance companies deal with nationally. And so rising insurance costs is a problem across the board.
Okay, thank you. So there's nothing else specific that you guys can think of that would to add to that, those comments?
With what Dr. Rankins mentioned is we are exploring efficiencies, particularly on helping with the large deductibles in the future. We have to navigate all the FEMA issues with that. So at the present time, we're not able to put the pool in place, but we're continuing to explore that and reach out to different people like the people at MEMA and FEMA and others to make sure it's done in the correct way.
Okay. Question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Buford or Commissioner, obviously I would assume you're looking at a catastrophic type policy where maybe you could self-insure on minor losses, but have a catastrophic policy that would cover major losses. I would imagine that's part of what you're researching.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know about this. If FEMA is concerned, are there any penalties or any adverse effects of if you don't have just a base level policy and you're using a catastrophic policy that they wouldn't cover the base level losses? How does that work with FEMA?
Yes, sir. So if it's possible to provide you something more detailed after this session, it's complicated enough that I've hired 2 different FEMA consultants to navigate it, and would not be interested in something that hasn't been done and proven to work for another state before. So I'm looking at how other states are dealing with this problem. But if it's not done correctly, then you risk your FEMA reimbursed opportunities.
Yeah, I'm familiar with other clients that I've got that have had just dramatic increases in their property insurance and their hazard insurance premiums. But I just want to make sure that I would assume that if it's something that, is significant, if it's a small damage, hopefully we have an internal pool that could cover it. But if it's a large damage, then, FEMA is going to be involved more than likely, but I wouldn't want it to be at a place where there was some gap between the coverage, if it was a number somewhere between what we had internally and a catastrophic policy that we didn't get hit by FEMA saying that they wouldn't cover their 75%. Of course, the state or the IHL would be for 12.5%, I would assume, and or MEMA would cover 12.5% on those losses.
Yeah, currently the universities have to reserve their high deductible levels, which is at a 1 million, 2.5 million, and then with wind and hail, it has a percentage that can be higher.
Okay.
But we have the CAT policy that sits, with high limits after those high deductibles.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else on the committee have a question on these matters? Okay, I'll turn it back over to you all now. I apologize that we interrupted, but those were just some burning questions that we had.
thank you, Senator Parks. Your presidents have any additional comments or statements to make before the subcommittee?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today, and thank you for the past support. Over the 2.5 years I've been president, I'm Joe Paul, president of the University of Southern Mississippi. Excuse me, Chairman Parks, for that. Over the past 2.5 years that I've been here, the state appropriations have been solid with incremental increases, and that's allowed us really this past year, for the first year at Southern Miss in 8 years, to have a faculty and staff pay raise. And so we're appreciative of that. You know, people ask me often in this job, what keeps you up at night? And it's really two primary things. First and foremost, keeping higher education affordable for our Mississippi families. And the second is around faculty and staff pay and keeping our best and brightest faculty members. So our priority obviously is a sustainable faculty and staff pay program. So it's just not 1 year and then there are 3 years that you can't accomplish it. And to do that at Southern Miss, we've got to do three things. There are three legs to the stool. We've got to continually internally be looking for cost efficiencies. And we've done that over the last 2.5 years in reducing staff, in closing or altering underperforming academic programs. And I told our faculty senate recently, I said, there won't be a semester when I'm president that we're not looking to find efficiencies, to examine what academic programs are growing and what are lacking in demand, so that we internally are finding all those dollars that we can. That's enabled us over these 2 years to address these fixed cost increases, which are incredible challenges in energy and in insurance. And of course, for Southern Miss, as a dual campus with research and teaching facilities all across the 3 coastal counties, we've got the added challenge of wind and flood insurance on top of the other. And so that's a big part of it. We've got to continually be finding ways to be more efficient, to find cost savings, and so that we can capture monies for faculty pay and to invest in emerging programs that are growing. On our campus, that includes computer science and engineering, construction management, and our health professions areas, to name just a few of those. The second thing is that we've got to continually be able to maintain and grow our enrollment. And that is a tremendous challenge over the next 2 decades in Mississippi. It is likely, if there's not an influx of population, which I believe there will be, that we'll have a 16% decrease in the number of high school graduates over about an 18-year period. So that just means we have to work smarter and harder. It's more competitive to maintain and turn our enrollments. When I became president, we had a 5-year decline. In 2 years, we've been able to turn that and just barely move it forward. And so for us, that's going to be incremental, but it's critical. And the third is reliable, sustainable, incremental increases in state appropriations. Those are the 3 legs of the stool. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Good morning. I'm Nora Miller, President of Mississippi University for Women, and I'd like to echo a lot of what President Paul had to say. It is difficult to keep up with those salary demands, and being 10 miles from the Alabama border, we feel the impact when they get increases. I'd also like to say, as far as that enrollment cliff and that decline that we're seeing, we are looking at building programs for adult learners. We're looking at, we know we can't just rely on the 18-year-old high school graduates. So we are looking at programs that will attract adult learners and also providing more graduate programs. So we're seeing this as an opportunity for us to kind of offset that decline. I would really like to thank you for the capital appropriations that we have received in the past. You mentioned about deferred maintenance and how we address that. We know there's always about $500,000 to $750,000 of things that will go wrong during the year that we weren't expecting. So we budget for that. And then as we look towards building our request for capital funding, we identify those areas that need the repair and renovation. And so our request for you this year as part of that is repair and renovation of one of our historic buildings that has probably is the heaviest use. It houses all of our humanities programs, and it's an older building. Being able to reinforce that will help us to address that deferred maintenance. And then the rest of what we have requested is general R&R that helps us with roofing and with other matters throughout. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for giving us the ability to give raises this past year. And I hope that we can continue that good work in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd be glad to offer some comments. I'm Mark Keenum, President, Mississippi State University, and I want to thank you and the members of this committee for all that you do and providing support for our institutions of higher learning. And I'll just tell you, I can't think of a better investment of taxpayer dollars than investing into higher education. For our state to continue to grow economically, to enhance the quality of life of all of our citizens, investing in higher education is the best investment. And it is an investment because what you provide to us as a system, we give back many times more back to the state. And so when I think about what our needs are, by far the number one priority at Mississippi State is our people. You know, to do what we do, to serve our state, to educate our students, prepare them to be leaders tomorrow, all the work that we do in our outreach and service to the state and all the demands the state has for our university, it takes good quality people. And you expect us to provide quality support back to the state, but it takes people. The commissioner made a very good point a moment ago talking about the fact that we are very thankful for your support in allowing us to provide pay raises this past year. For us, it was about a 2.5% pay raise. That's less than cost of living. But our faculty, and we're very pleased with that, don't get me wrong. But it's still, even though we went up, our peer institutions provided higher pay raises. To give you an example, our assistant professors a year ago this time were at 84% of our Southern University group average. This year, they dropped to 80%. Our full professors, who are our most valuable members of our faculty, a year ago were at 72% of our average of our peer salaries. This year, they dropped from 72 to 70%. So while we increased, we backed up in our comparative to what other universities that we compete with for talent, for quality, for all the things that we're required to do. We have to compete in that market for these outstanding people, and we're backing up in spite of the fact that we were able to provide a pay raise. When you look at our challenges, obviously salaries. For us to give a 1% pay raise at Mississippi State, it cost us about $3.9 million. So if you do just a 2% pay raise, that's $7.8 million. New money that we have to come up with. The commissioner talked about inflation. It's real, and it's on all of our campuses. It's everywhere. It's in our own personal lives. But at Mississippi State, for every 1% increase in cost of operations due to inflation, it cost us about $2.4 million. I can tell you that we will have at least a 3% increase in next year's cost of operations. So that's $7.2 million that we have to come up with just to cover our cost. So if you combine a 2%, if that's all we provide, that's $7.8 million for salaries. Inflation, another $7.2 million. That's $15 million that we have to come up with in our operating budget just to keep status quo, really, and even provide less than a cost of living increase for our faculty, staff. Where do we come up with $15 million? Well, I'm looking at the people who can help something to do with that, and y'all have been very generous to us. And it has to be a partnership between our institutions and you. the stewards of our tax dollars in the state to make these appropriate investments. And, you know, for every 1% increase in tuition, it generates about $1 million on our campus. So if we have to come up with 15 million new dollars just to maintain status quo, that's a 15% increase in tuition for our students and their families. That's excessive. And I don't think that any of us would want to think about a 15% increase. And so that's where our partnership, we recognize that we'll have to raise tuition, but we need to work in partnership with you, our state leaders, to help us come up with a plan to meet our financial needs for our institution. So those are the major issues, Madam Chair, that I wanted to be able to share with you. And thank you for all that you do to support us.
Thank you, Dr. Keenum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dan Ennis. I'm the president of Delta State University in Cleveland. I want to thank my colleagues for their comments and affirm all that they say, the challenges that all the institutions face with inflation. But I want to draw your attention to the earlier hearing you had about MTAG and emphasize how important that will be for many of us, along with Compete to Complete, to manage what folks have called the demographic cliff. The fact is there's over 300,000 Mississippians who have started college but do not have a degree. For Delta State, now I know for my colleagues at the W and probably every president and chancellor representative in this space, that's the group that will buffer the decline in 18-year-olds. And there's a virtuous cycle here because that group can be unlocked and moved into the middle class if we can ease their path back to a college degree. The reason that we focus on that group at Delta State is that they have shown evidence of aspiration for a four-year degree and something happened to them. They had a child. They had a personal challenge. They couldn't afford tuition. Despite our efforts to keep tuition low, it's still an economic burden for many people. But if we can circle back on the policy side as university presidents, all of us look at ways that we can welcome that unusual group back to college. And that means, as Dr. Paul said, we're no longer going to entirely be oriented around 18-year-olds. There's got to be the policies, procedures, and programs that will welcome a 27-year-old back to college who has children, or a 35-year-old who wants to reskill and move into a management position or something like that. So on your side, I think, Madam Chair, we would ask that you take the recommendations regarding MTAG to heart, because unlocking MTAG for part-time students and Pell-eligible students will allow thousands of Mississippians to restart the college degree they started 5, 10, 15 years ago. And as Dr. Paul said, that's the best investment you can make in the economic development of the state. We'd be able to move many people into a middle-class position, but we can't reach them without some help, and we hope that you'll consider helping us in that mission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Gerald Briggs, president at Mississippi Valley State University. And I agree with all that's been said from my colleagues in really addressing the challenge of the enrollment cliff. We were blessed to really put forth a very aggressive strategic enrollment plan that did result in a significant increase last year of 16.9%. And we had a slight increase this year. But coupled with those successes is the retaining of our faculty, where over the last 3 years, we've lost roughly about 10% of our faculty every year because of the competitive nature, and they are being pulled and recruited by other institutions around the country. But coupled with this is the challenge of replacing them. And that's really been hard for us to be able to replace the faculty, understanding that our salary structure is probably the lowest in the system. But all in all, I think that that's going to be something that we're going to now look to address is how do we put forward that same aggressive plan to retain our faculty. But overall, that has been one of the biggest challenges for us. Even though that the recruitment and retention of students has increased, again, we want to make sure that we have the quality faculty in place that's providing that education to assure they're getting the education they need to move themselves forward. So again, that's really part of the challenge. It is the salary, but it's also now how do we replace those that are leaving to assure, again, the university's continued success. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Briggs.
Good morning. Tracy Cook, President of Alcorn State University. Just want to take this time to say thank you for all that you have done for this great state and the university. I echo what my colleagues say. Due to the funds we received, we was able to give our faculty, not only our faculty, but our staff a 3% pay raise for 3 consecutive years, which a total of 9%. And our goal is to build capacity, efficiency, and customer service. By doing so, we've seen an increase in our student population this fall 2024. But the challenge to come is our housing. We locate in Southwest Mississippi, and development of our infrastructure plan to go along with the aging infrastructure which we have on campus require a lot of upkeeps and upgrades to our dormitories on campus. Currently, we can house 1,995 students, have a total of about 1,700 plus students on campus, representing 57 counties, 36 states. And that's one of our goals and infrastructure as far as trying to improve our housing capacity on campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cook.
Senator Parks, thank you and the committee for your time today, and we are also appreciative of your support. I can say in my 13 months, it's been absolutely wonderful to work with you, but we are grateful for the support for Jackson State University over the years. And as my colleagues have stated, we are grateful also for the appropriations that we receive for raises for our faculty, and we were able to do so at Jackson State, and we appreciate your consideration that we can do that in the future, that we can continue to recruit the brightest and the finest to educate our students who are our priorities. And we share many of the same concerns, but like President Cook, one of our greatest challenges is the need for additional housing at Jackson State University. Over the past several years, we've had a wait list of about 400 students, and we have not been able to bring those students to our campus due to those housing needs. We are grateful for support that you've provided. We brought a mixed-use space back online just recently where we are able to house students there. We've taken funds as well to renovate spaces for our band students, a new band hall that we were, or an existing space that we renovated, but we are in dire need for housing. So we would appreciate any consideration that you may have, because as we're working through various enrollment strategies, we are able to recruit students as it relates to applications, but we need to convert those students, those applications to students at the university, and that's largely made possible due to housing because of the demographic that we serve. Unfortunately, many of our students, if they do not have access to housing, they will not be able to attend the university. So we're grateful for your continued support and just thankful for all that you have done, not only for Jackson State, but for the IHL system as well.
Thank you, sir.
And Senator Parks, I want to circle back to a question you raised about a policy regarding deferred maintenance. Although our board doesn't have a policy, there is a metric, which is our age of facilities ratio that we do evaluate internally in my office with myself, our system-wide facilities director, and our system chief financial officer. And we provide feedback to the IOs, particularly when I evaluate them and we look at their budgets. And if we see that maybe they're not putting enough into their campus budget for maintaining their facilities, they get a note from me that this is something you need to take a look at. So we are although we don't have a board policy, we do have some internal procedures in place to make sure that our universities are taking care of their facilities.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, any other questions from, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I thought about this when Dr. Thompson was speaking of, I know some of the Alcorn housing projects, but Dr. Thompson, as it relates to the old hotel downtown, has any work been, I know that's early in the game on that, but has any work been done to help with the downtown housing for your university?
So Senator Hobson, so we've currently, we have a 2-year lease with the Walthall Lofts and Courthouse where we do have students downtown. You all were so gracious enough to appropriate funds for the Marriott. That's probably what you're referencing, yes. And so we are now the board office. They're looking at that transaction, and hopefully the board office is doing their due diligence there. So when we hear back from that, we'll be able to determine how we move forward with that initiative. Thank you.
Okay, any other?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't believe I'm on your subcommittee, but thank you for giving me this opportunity. Dr. Rankins, the enrollment cliff is real. I think everyone acknowledges that in this room. We have talked today about the way that you want to backfill some of that lost revenue through initiatives, but the other side of this is the expense side, which gets back to the budget. I'm concerned about the graduation rate overall from IHL and our students. And I want to make sure that we stay focused on graduating students, not just getting them enrolled and paying tuition. However, we do know that there's going to be a decrease in students coming into IHLs over the next couple of years. And I'd like to know what IHL's plan is going to be to reduce those expenses or to compensate for those reduced inventory or income that you're going to receive from tuition. And I would like to see some type of a plan put together so that we have an expectation from the legislature as to how you're going to address this issue going forward.
Thank you, Senator Delano, for your question. And I anticipated this question. And our universities have already submitted to me their plans for addressing the enrollment cliff. I'll be happy to share that with you and other members of this subcommittee and the Senate. But this is something that our universities are thinking about every day. We don't just come to you and ask for more money. They are doing the work on campus to look at savings and ways to be more efficient. And as demonstrated on one of my early slides, even though enrollment has gone up, the faculty numbers have remained relatively stable and administrative numbers have gone down. So we're doing more with less. We've been doing that for some time now. So we welcome sharing those plans with you and other members.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I do have one other question, Dr. Rankins. In looking over the legislative funding, you show that there's a total request on the funding priorities of $1,350,000. In this, it's in the request currently on, I'm not sure what page that is, maybe 12, 11. In addition to that, you've asked for the bond request this session to be $126 million. I just want to clarify, is that correct?
Yes, that number for our bond request is correct for 2025 as part of our multi-year plan. But we are asking for, capital expense funding as well, in addition to our bond request.
Okay, so it is correct, the 100 million,
Yeah.
350,000.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Any other questions from the committee? All right. At this time, again, let me thank you. I know it was travel to come down to visit with us today, so I appreciate that very much. I share the same sentiments, and I believe this whole body does, that, this is an investment in the state. The students are an investment in our future. And I look forward to continuing this partnership with you all. And I think we all have a common theme goal that we want to, move Mississippi forward and continue the economic growth in this state with our students from the state. So I again appreciate all the attention you've given to the details this morning and answering the questions. Safe travels back home.
Thank you.
Thank you.